Greetings, Trinitarians. This podcast is possible partly because of Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary in Evansville, Indiana. If you're interested in beginning your theological academic journey at Trinity, contact us at Trinitysem, that's Trinitysem.edu today.
Greetings and welcome to Trinity Radio. My name is Jonathan Pritchett, and back with me is
Braxton Hunter.
World Traveler.
Well, I have lived in Turkey for the past month.
That's right. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. Stay with us.
I guess we ought to have some kind of a Bible out.
Yeah.
So
it's not heresy. It's
it's Harrison.
Wow! They gave us nothing but tradition and no argument. All they did was get on this stage, yell real loud, and set a straw man on fire.
Okay, now I was not impressed. I've never heard of this gentleman before, but.
And there is no evidence at all, except in the imagination of Dr. Braxton and like-minded thinkers, that there is such a thing as an objective morality.
All right, well, that was a very passionate speech by Professor Alvarez. However, let me point out a couple of things that I have not argued tonight that Professor Alvarez seems to think that I have argued.
Everything that begins to exist must have a cause for its existence.
On behalf of humanity, God became man to die for the sin of the world. Then, because of that sacrifice, you can rise from the dead just like he rose from the dead. And we're back, and I am glad to be back from Turkey. And just so you know, this is not going to be an episode that is just me talking about how awesome my trip was.
It's not a travelogue?
It was pretty awesome, though. Yeah. No, I'm gonna make a little travelogue too. Yeah. I haven't made one of those topical videos in 2018 at all. And so they had, people.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah, so
you know what? It takes 3-4 times as much work to do a 3-minute video than it does to do this.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
that's right.
See, again, I have to remind people, we don't have people who do this stuff for us. We
have people that do some stuff for us, but it has to be related to the function of the school in general. Okay, so I did just go. Well, you don't have anybody.
Right.
But you come in my office and tell me what I'm supposed to do for the academic department.
Right,
so anyway, I did just get back from Turkey. For those that haven't seen previous episodes, I was over there shooting a documentary, hosting a documentary with a new friend. I didn't know him before, but a new friend, Stephen Franks, British guy, who we just had a blast. We worked together through the whole thing, and when we got done with the shooting, we were supposed to fly from a town called Izmir back to Istanbul, where we would then get on an international flight a couple days later back to the States. He would go to Canada. He's Canadian. I would go to the States. But he and I decided to rent a car in southwestern Turkey and drive across the entire country. Now, I'll just say this real quick, but it had a connector for an iPhone. He had an iPhone. So I thought, we're stuck with his music this whole time. But he's 67 years old, but he had every band that I listened to. I couldn't think of an artist that I liked that he didn't have their whole catalog. And not because it's a streaming service. Like, he's created his own playlists for all these groups. Right. So we're going across the country just singing and at the top of our lungs.
What can make me feel this way? My girl, my girl, my girl, talking about
It was a real blast. So Stephen was a good friend, and so you may hear me reference Stephen as we talk through this. But what we're going to do today, it's not just going to be a travelogue, but it's also going to be a discussion a little bit of the 7 churches.
Yes, but first we do need to thank all of the people that are kind of in our sphere of friendship who helped you.
Yeah.
While you were doing your documentary.
Including yourself.
Yes, especially me, because I did a lot of work.
Well, yeah, what he's talking about is, so the production crew, the Turkish production crew that was filming all of this and wrote a narration and wrote lines for us at all these places, it became a situation. Now, they did a good job trying to put this whole thing together, and I could never do a lot of what they did, but
Yeah, you don't own drones.
Right, right. I'd like to own drones.
Yeah.
And maybe if you become a patron out there, just click up in the right-hand
right.
corner
We
of
might
here.
buy some drones.
And, or if you're listening on audio,
Get some aerial shots of the Fifth Third building.
Patreon.com/Trinity Radio. We'll get the drone fleet ready. But
right.
but what he's talking about is this production crew had written things, but let's just say it this way, I wasn't 100% satisfied with what it was. And these guys are not scholars, right? This is a production team.
Yeah.
And so I began rewriting the lines for myself originally and for Stephen, and then Stephen started rewriting his own lines. We were rewriting everything, so somewhere about halfway through this production, we hadn't done the narration yet, which is the majority of each episode of this documentary, just on the lines. So this guy comes to me, and the director, and says, you know what, we're happier with your narration, with the way you write, than we are with what we've done. So would you write the narration?
Do they actually credit anybody in the production crew with the script or? With the
I don't know
narration?
what they're going to do, and I don't.
I mean, did they tell you who actually was the person that?
Oh yeah, I know who it was.
You know, I know who it was.
No, and like I say, if this isn't the world you live in, they did a good job. But the thing about it is, or they did all they could do. I'll just say it that way. But the thing about it is, he came to me, I think it was a wise decision, I don't mean that arrogantly, and asked me if I would write the thing. The only thing is, that would mean about 16,000 words in a week and a half.
Yeah.
And not just 16,000, I can write 16,000 words. I'm not trying to be braggy, but this would be a lot of research and academic writing. And so I rallied the Trinity Radio crew, as I would put it. And so I offered certain people the opportunity. If I did not offer you, it's not that I don't appreciate your scholarship. I just may not have thought of it as I was in a third world country trying to film a documentary. I just thought of who first comes to mind. And the people that came to mind, obviously Jonathan. I wrote one completely by myself, and then I added another half to most, because you guys that gave it to me didn't give me the word count I asked for. You did once. Nick did once. Second Yang did once. So we basically have a group effort that makes up the narration that I actually say on screen. Yeah. So we had, let's see. So let's just walk through the churches. Okay, Ephesus was second Yang. Smyrna's me. Pergamum is Jonathan. Mm-hmm. Thyatira, Jonathan and Austin Long. Let's see. Sardis is Matt Chisholm. Great job, Matt. Philadelphia was Keith Sherlin. Incredible job, Keith Sherlin. Wouldn't expect any less. Laodicea was Nick. Did I cover everything?
And then I did Aspendos in Pergae for fun, because y'all wanted to get that stuff.
Yeah, so we had a couple of sites, because this was not actually just a documentary on the 7 churches.
Right.
This was a documentary on historical sites in South Turkey and Southwest Turkey. Yeah. And so a couple of other cities are mixed in there. One of those is Aspendos, which you gave me 300 words on Aspendos.
Yes.
Because there's nothing on Aspendos.
Except for this awesome theater.
It's amazing.
Yeah, right.
The problem is, you did a good job giving me the 300 words out of the 1,800 to 2,200 I needed, and you really did, because there's just not much to say. But then the things you did give me, half of that I'd already said in my lines at the location. So it ended up being like 150 words. And so, but what I was able to do, and this is something that I was able to do because I was there on location, and maybe this speaks to the value of this documentary and what it's going to show people, is when you're on location and you're seeing these things in vibrant color and from every angle, you see things, you're able to talk about things that a Wikipedia article or journal articles or whatever aren't going to give you. You know, for example, in Sardis, Matt did a great job. He covered everything that you can find from researching Sardis. But what he wasn't there to see is, first of all, you're just in awe of the temple of Artemis that's there. You can't put that into words. And then the second thing...
So were her worshipers.
Yeah, they were in awe. And then...
they start riots over that kind of thing.
I will say there's actually still a church building on the temple of Artemis complex that was built in the 4th century after the imperial worship cult ended and continued on through the 600s. But anyway, and you got to wonder, what are these guys that are that pastored on the sites of like Sardis or Laodicea? what do they do when they preach on the letter to Sardis? For the letter? Anyway.
Yeah, over there, you remember?
Yeah. Here's what Jesus says to us. Yeah. Can we maybe try to improve our reputation? But what Matt couldn't have known is they have this incredible gymnasium, Roman gymnasium there. So when I'm talking about it, and this is how I got your 300 words on Aspendos up to the proper amount, is because I was able to talk about the experience of climbing up the stairs of that theater and getting a buddy to stand in the middle on the stage.
Yeah, I could
and
never
the
write that
acoustics,
because nobody invited me.
Yeah, that's right.
It's called nobody invited me.
Well, it's not my fault. I didn't put this together. I'm just a hired singer here. Yeah. You know, I didn't put this thing together.
See, it doesn't really matter how good of buddies you are with Braxton. You still be the, you know.
Well, you're getting writing credits.
You still end up
in a major documentary
while you're out trotting the globe.
But the point is that a great effort by the Trinity Radio listeners and some Trinity students and stuff. And I'm really proud of that because honestly, I told them if you do this, we'll give you writing credits, and the Trinity logo is going to be in the thing and all that.
And notice that you first went to Trinity Radio people as opposed to the majority of our faculty so at Trinity.
Well, I did include faculty. They just didn't respond. Besides you. Including Leighton Flowers.
Right.
Hello.
Yeah.
But
thanks a lot, Leighton.
You know, he had 5 Google Hangouts that day, I'm sure.
Right.
But the thing about it was, I don't think they did it just because of the writing credits.
Because they're good people.
I think they did it because they love the kingdom and they love us. I think that was it.
Yeah, they're good people.
Yeah, it really meant a lot to me. So let's crack into this. Okay?
No, before we crack into that, I want to mention one of the guys that helped us out, Austin Long. Austin.
Love Austin Long.
He's a student here at Trinity. He's also a supporter of the show. Wonderful guy. He's a 20-year-old pastor, full-time pastor out. Tabor City, somewhere?
North Carolina.
Yeah, somewhere out there. Anyway, and he's got a blog called The Paleo Baptist. And Kendra, who is another patron of ours and wonderful lady.
Love Kendra.
Yeah, she sent us these T-shirts that she also made for Austin. My microphone's in the way. Paleo Baptist. Now, what is a paleo? What is a Paleo Baptist?
It's a Baptist doing the paleo diet.
There you go. What is a paleo
diet? Is that right?
Diet? No.
Oh, okay.
No, I am currently on a diet, but it's not the paleo diet. What I actually liked the moniker so much that
That's what you call yourself.
Yeah, Austin gave me a label that I was like, I'll take it. Because it's not like paleo orthodoxy, which, no, it wasn't. That's not an emergent thing. Emergent people just kind of hijacked it. It's basically the mere Christianity, right?
Of the Baptist stream.
No, well, I mean, paleo orthodoxy in general. Yeah. Thomas Oden, Alistair McGrath, that whole project's kind of continuation, mere Christianity. What has been believed always, everywhere, by everyone, right?
That's right.
Right? Well, of course, Oden and guys like McGrath and others are also Paedo-Baptists. Well, people like Austin Long and myself, we are Credo-Baptists. So instead of going by Paleo-Orthodox, we distinguish ourselves as, early mentions from Tertullian in 220 AD and elsewhere is about as early as you could, 3rd century writings, about as early as you can find infant baptism. Now, granted, just because that's when you find it in the writings doesn't mean that there wasn't a tradition that preceded that, right? Yeah. But we're Baptists, so that means we're Credo-Baptists, which means we affirm believers' baptism. So instead of just going all into Paleo-Orthodoxy, we're going to go even further what we believe, we're Paleo-Baptists. So essentially we affirm the consensus of the church, probably the first 5 centuries, the first 4 councils, right? The first 3 creeds, 2 testaments, 1 Bible. And so, I actually agree with that. I know that a lot of people get nervous about the early church fathers for, weird reasons, especially Baptists, which I always think is weird because right now the interim president of Southwestern is a patristic scholar. Now, Austin is one of those guys who's read the entire Philip Schaff editions of the Ante-Nicene, Nicene, and Post-Nicene Fathers. You know that set in my thing that I never read? He's read the entire thing.
Yeah, I'm glad he's passionate about that.
Yeah,
because
I have
that's
not,
an angle that not
but
a lot
I've
of
read
guys-
bits, and I think there's a wealth of good stuff there. The consensus of the early church, and then just let everything else be, it's interesting to debate and have fun, but it doesn't define historic Orthodox
Well, it's
Christianity.
interesting that
and I
you-
think that's a good idea, and that's why I was like, yeah, I can go along with that. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I can go to a Calvinist and say, most, not all, but most Calvinists I could go to and say, you believe everything I believe, I just don't believe everything you believe. I can go to an Arminian, you believe everything I believe, I just don't believe everything you believe. I can go to a Catholic, you believe everything I believe, I just don't believe everything you believe. So it's kind of that whole thing. But people think of ecumenical folks and ecumenical Christianity and ecumenism in general is a horrible thing. I don't think it's a horrible thing. I don't think it's a dirty word. As a vice president of academic affairs at a multi-denominational school, I get on with everybody.
So there's Paleo Baptist, and we appreciate the T-shirts.
That's really the main thing.
And we appreciate Kendra, too. Is she the one that actually sent them to us? She designed them, I think, didn't she?
Yes, she designed them. She's an artist. Excellent artwork that she does.
Yeah.
She shows it to us on Marco Polo. She sent and then she also, in addition to sending us the shirts, she sent me metal straws.
Metal straws, like they're using in California because they don't want to throw away the plastic and kill the dolphins?
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
Did she send one for me?
No.
Dang it, Kendra. All right, that's okay. I don't want to carry around.
You don't make the. We were talking about that when that was a thing, and so I was making a bunch of jokes. So it's really just to tell me to be more.
Well, hey, look, there's
friendly.
an equality in the world here because I got to go to Turkey and film a documentary,
and I get a metal straw from Kendra. Yeah, that
everything balances.
No, that's not balanced at all.
So anyway,
if that helps you sleep at night,
it's interesting that you bring.
Fine.
It's interesting that you bring up. This church councils and all these kind of things and baptism sort of indirectly, because we're talking here about the church at Ephesus real quick. And, the church at Ephesus, let's just read the relevant data. It's the angel of the church in Ephesus, right? The one who holds the 7 stars in his hand, the one who walks among the 7 gold lampstands, says this: I know your deeds and your toil and perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil men, and you put to the test those who call themselves apostles. And they are not, and you found them to be false, and you have perseverance, and have endured for my name's sake, and have not grown weary. But I have this against you. See, I think maybe a lot of people think that if Jesus wrote a letter to the church, he'd just say something like, I know the plans that I have for you, that kind of thing. But no, there's a mixture here. But I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Therefore, remember from where you have fallen, and repent and do the deeds you did at first, or else I am coming to you and will remove your lampstand out of its place unless you repent. Yet this you do have, that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has any ear, let him hear. Okay, so...
Interesting. Jesus, like a lot of people, will say something very kind. It's like he's like the consumer politician. My friends on the other side of the party, blah, 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 wonderful men that they are, but...
Well, and perhaps the way Jesus approaches these things has had an effect on culture.
Yeah.
Which is that if you're going to criticize someone, sometimes, if you can, say something nice.
Yeah. Puff them up before you knock them down, right?
Well, and in their case, what does he like about them? They don't tolerate evil men. Yeah. And they test people who claim to be apostles. Yeah. So they're interested in doctrine. This is an interesting thing.
Affirm the good where you can.
Right, but for people that listen to theology podcasts, this is maybe good for us to hear, because what he's saying, as best I can tell, is you love to make sure that the doctrine is sound. You love to make sure that everybody's saying the right things and they are the right things, and you don't tolerate evil men, and all of that. But you've left your first love. And, it's kind of like the heart isn't where it ought to be.
Are you going to say that they replaced relationship with religion?
No, I hate that moniker.
Right,
I've said it.
Good. I've
said it. Christianity is a religion. Deal with it. It is.
I was just going to say, is that what you're about to say?
No. One of the first conversations you and I ever had was in my living room, and I said something about the relationship religion thing, and I groaned because I hate when people say that.
Right.
It is a religion.
Yeah.
If a religion is defined, okay, I could go off. If a religion is defined as that which binds you to reality, which is how a lot of major world religions textbooks define it, I think that's perfectly fine. The beliefs that bind you to reality, that make sense of reality for you. It's more than a worldview, and it's a religious worldview. And Christianity is that. It just happens to be the right one.
Yeah.
I think there's a fear that, like, well, it's Phariseeism. But I do think there's some of that going on at Ephesus. Yeah. So you've left your first love. That would be a difficult thing to hear, but interestingly, at Ephesus, of course, you have the big theater there where there was a big protest over Paul because he was preaching against the idols, and that was hurting the economy there, and all those kind of things. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. Maybe John's burial place is there. Yeah. Maybe Luke's burial place is there. There's a lot of interesting stuff. But
yeah, I mean, John was practically writing from Ephesus when he wrote his gospel. That's according to tradition, which I affirmed that.
And Mary is said to have lived there in the last days of her life because John is, Jesus tells John to take care of his mother, right?
Unless you're Ben Witherington.
What does he say about that?
That's Lazarus.
That's Lazarus, because Lazarus is the disciple that Jesus loved. Okay, but we're not going down that road. This is why Trinity Radio episodes are so long, because we often do go down these roads. But what I don't affirm, and I doubt you affirm, is, okay, so they're really proud. This is like the number one tourist site in the entire nation.
Well, yeah, but it's got so much.
Well, right. You're benefited with, who did you have if you're the church at Ephesus? You had none less than Paul, John, Aquila and Priscilla, Apollos, Timothy, all of these people. And you got John's burial place, probably. And here's why they don't have Mary. Why don't you think they have Mary's burial place?
I don't know.
Because they don't want to miss out on those Catholic tourists who are paying that Catholic tourist money who believe that Mary ascended.
I got you.
So, but they have Mary's house. You got to have a site for Mary. Yeah. You know why they have a site for Mary's house? Because some German nun in the 1800s never been to Turkey, had a vision of where Mary's house was.
Ah, well, that's how that happened.
So if you believe that, then they have Mary's house. But anyway, I
mean, that's kind of like the 3 different tomb sites for Jesus' burial in Israel. It's like, which one do you want? Could be none, But it could be one of the 3. It could be none of the 3. Nobody knows.
No, here's what you do. I've been multiple times. You've been. Here's what you do. You go to the garden tomb to get the feels, right?
Yeah.
Here, this feels like what it would look like. And then you go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre for what is more likely, probably. Even though I say exactly the opposite in a book that I wrote once called Blinding Lights.
Change your mind.
Yeah, I changed my mind.
Which means you're probably right.
Yeah, right.
No, I mean, I was like, why can't this just give us an image of a first century tomb and leave it at that? You don't have to say that his body was in here. No, you have no idea.
You don't, but it's nice to know that maybe. Now, I'll get to that in just a second. There's something I want to say. The reason I brought up this was we're talking about church councils. Mm-hmm. The Council of Ephesus, which was held in 431, was at the Church of St. Mary in Ephesus, and it still is there. Interesting things about this. So this church, talk about standing where someone stood. This church, the sanctuary, is maybe 4 times the size of the room that we're sitting in right now. It's not very big. It's about the size of some small churches in the American South that I used to preach in and still preach in. And so you can walk around in the sanctuary at the Church of St. Mary. You can walk the whole thing in a couple of seconds, and that's where the council took place. That's it. That's where it was. That's pretty cool. And what did they do there? They rejected Nestorianism and re-rejected, affirmed their rejection of Pelagianism.
Right.
So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
And in the back, tell me what you make out of this. All right, we've had all these debates throughout church history about the mode of baptism. At the back of the church, they have a room where I filmed a scene, and in the ground, dug out about 4 feet deep with stairs going down and coming back up out, is a baptistry.
Just like the Baptist churches do, right?
almost exactly, except they don't have the little barrier where you don't have to get wet and you can still back out. But yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they may have added on to the church, and that
so
was
what you're
later
saying
additions.
is so deep that the mode of immersion has got to be.
Well, yeah.
Did they have a little thing where they marked how high you fill the water?
I'd like to go back and see if there's a
didn't.
watermark line there.
There's not going to be.
So you've got a 4 foot deep region here with stairs on each side. That is just exactly, by the way, the right height for the initiate to get on their knees and bend forward or be laid back. But let's just go with the bend your knees, go forward, following, I think the Didache says that. It's perfect for that. Why dig this big thing if you're going to pour?
Maybe just to imitate freshwater lakes or something else,
I don't know.
Aesthetics.
It's a piece of data that needs to be included in
it is, but somebody could push back and say, well, yeah, it's just replicating the aesthetics of being out.
By the way, it's not just there. There's more of these things. It's like it was a common thing at some point.
Sure.
And
also
400s.
Judaism preceded that one.
But Jews did baptism.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But that's all important too, Yeah. It's just like, if you're considering what Paul's view of human freedom was, if you're considering Paul's view of human freedom, then it's interesting to know what the Pharisees believed about human freedom, right? It's not a slam dunk, but it's interesting to know. Well, what did the Jews do? What did the people? This is important to anyway.
I agree with you. That's why
you're just trying to be sober minded, and not
Paleo-Baptist.
There's a baptistry, so we win, right? Is that what you're trying to get away from?
Well, normally I'd be like, "There's a baptistry, we win." But
so what's happening today? Why is it different?
Well, I don't know. I have this whole but I'm Paleo Baptist, right? Because Kendra made me a shirt. You are as of today. Yeah. We're Baptists.
Yeah.
And you pretty much agree with the consensus of the early church, more so than you can agree with like the pre-remonstrant consensus of the Reformation. Yeah. You're more in agreement with them than you were before the Radical Reformation. You're. I
think so. We'll just take it. We'd have to take it view by view. All right. So the church.
Yeah, we got to move
Smyrna,
this along.
We're going to move more quickly. We've only covered one. Wait, but this is the thing, because Ephesus is the most complete ruins and has a lot to say about it.
Well, I'm going to be talking about Ephesus a little bit later today, anyway. For work stuff.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to send you what Second Yang wrote on Ephesus?
No, I want to be surprised.
Okay. To the church of Smyrna, Jesus says, unto the angel of the church of Smyrna, write, the first and the last who was dead and has come to life, says this: I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. And the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you're about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison so that you will be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes will not be hurt by the second death. I should say also, I did use a little bit of a Bible Brodown article, just one paragraph worth of the Smyrna.
So you didn't do all of this by yourself?
I guess not. I will say this, though. When I was recording the narration, the director said because this was supposed to be a secular, but history of these places. But then we're going to do a Christian version later. But this is a secular history. And when I read the Bible Brodown paragraph, just that paragraph, he's like, "Don't you think like that's a little too Christian-y?" So with Smyrna, a couple of things. First of all, interestingly, in terms of the text, notice that with the church of Smyrna, Jesus tells them that though they think they're poor, they're actually rich. Mm-hmm. This is precisely the inverse of what he tells Laodicea. You think you're rich, but you're actually poor. I think that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And so that's interesting. There's not... the church at Smyrna, he says, they've been persecuted. They're going to be persecuted more, and you're going to be persecuted for 10 days. Now, that's interesting.
Yeah.
10 days. Now, obviously... the book of Revelation has a lot of imagery, but in these letters, you don't get as much of that kind of thing. 10 days was most of the scholars seem to think 10 days is a first century euphemism for a little while. Mm-hmm. It's not literally 10 days, but a while. Mm-hmm. But what I think is interesting about this is the historical account of what happened to Polycarp, which I think, it could be embellished or it could be all miraculously true. Mm-hmm. But Polycarp apparently had a vision or a dream that his pillow was burning on fire, and he interpreted this to mean that he was going to be burned to the stake. And sure enough, a few days later, some guards show up and they want to burn him at the stake. So they're supposed to come take him to be burned at the stake. And he says, by the way, I'm talking about Polycarp because he was the bishop of Smyrna. And so he and a direct disciple of John. Mm-hmm. So he says to the guys that come to arrest him, I'll tell you what, let me make you guys some food, and I'm going to go pray. He says, okay. And after he does this kindness for them, they're like, why are we going to kill this guy? So they take him to the executioner, and the executioner's like, why do we need to kill this guy? And so the custom was to nail Polycarp to the stake. But he says, there's no need. I'll stand right here and burn to death. And he says something like, I've faithfully served Jesus all these years. Why would I turn my back on him now? Right. And so they burn him. And here's as the story goes, that the flames, a wind kicked up and the flames wouldn't touch him. But they formed like almost a cocoon of fire around him without harming him at all. And the Jews, even though it was the Sabbath, were like, dadgummit, we're going to work. And they went and got a bunch of sticks to throw more onto the pyre. Yeah. And he still wouldn't burn, and so finally they run him through with a sword. Now, what do you do with a story like that? That's a good question. It's not Scripture, it's church history, but what do you do with a story like that? Is that Christian embellishment, or is that what happened, you think?
Probably some mixture of the two.
A mixture of both?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, because you could almost kind of see. I burn a lot of wood in my backyard, right? Yeah. I love my fire pit. And so I've seen fire do weird things. Just if you play with fire enough, you see weird things happen with the wind. I mean, this is in Evansville. There's nothing blocking wind anywhere around here.
Just flat corn.
Yeah. So I've seen fire do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I mean, you could almost see it just as a occurrence. Yeah. Something kind of like that would happen. But
could be.
I mean, it could be a little bit of embellishment, but it could also be things like that. Now you were in one city where the wind just did all kinds of crazy stuff.
That's the next city. But with you're right. And here's the thing, I have no reason to doubt this, because do we believe miraculous stuff happens or don't we? Yeah, we do. So you've got a guy who's a disciple of John, who's the bishop of Smyrna. He's being completely faithful, and this happens so that everyone standing around is like, shoot, this something special about this guy. In fact, I think there was some conversions that took place because of this. That's fine. It could, if I find out it's an embellishment, does that destroy my faith? No, but I have no reason to doubt it, to be skeptical. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it is that even if it was like you just said, wind does weird stuff. Some people say
the timing of it is
providential, right? So that's important to mention. So anyway, I just want to say that about Smyrna. When you talk about what's going to happen, it did happen. This was a correct prophecy, and they were. There's not, when you go to Smyrna today, as you'll see in the documentary, if you watch it, which you should, it's in downtown Izmir. Izmir is the intellectual capital of Turkey, and it's in a downtown area, and it's not very big. Maybe a couple of city blocks big is how big it is. And there's not much there. You can go down underground. There's some tunnel systems there. It's interesting and all, but there's some Greek stuff written on some stuff. I mean,
there's Greek stuff from the ancient world?
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
But there's not a whole lot there. But it is cool.
I mean, these were mostly, Roman twins, Hellenistic Greek cities.
Yeah.
And a lot of them very cosmopolitan for the time.
Yeah, I mean, Smyrna was actually in a different location originally, but in the first century, it was at the site we were at. I think it was Alexander the Great that had a dream or something that it should be moved, and I think Lysimachus, one of his lieutenants, ended up moving it, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that detail, but I think that's right.
Yeah.
And so it was moved there, and it took advantage of its coastal situation. And became an export city. Mm-hmm. And so it became a prosperous, wealthy city, and there was the crown of Smyrna. Well, Jesus says, you want a crown of life, I can give you that.
Yeah.
So interesting. All right, move on from Smyrna. to Pergamum. You wrote Pergamum for me. Now, this is insider knowledge, but when you watch the documentary, you'll see Pergamum, which is atop a mountain.
Yeah.
I know this because you wrote this. I mean, I know it because I was there, but I know this detail because you wrote it. It's on a hill in a valley, 16 miles from the Aegean coast.
Yes.
Yeah. And I almost remember the name of the valley, but I don't. A lot of them were the Lycus Valley. I don't think this was the Lycus Valley. Anyway, but it's on the top of this hill. And
that's
wind,
where you build it. It's for the Acropolis. I mean, you have it.
Yeah, got to be on the top of the hill, and particularly this place because they had like a temple for everybody, an altar for everybody,
Yes.
and it was like a one-stop shop. If you wanted to go, so you had the altar of Zeus, which we still have today. It's in Berlin at a museum there, and maybe Alex, our German listener, isn't he still living in Germany? He could go see the altar. Actually, he can't. They've just shut it down. But anyway,
sorry, Alex.
Yeah, never mind.
You should have already done this.
You haven't done it. It's too late. Never mind that, Alex. But they had that there, and it could be seen for miles and miles away because it's massive. Then you also had Athena, who is the patron goddess of the city for wisdom. You had Dionysius for pleasure, and you had the theater there, and steepest theater in the world, 70-degree angle.
Yeah.
Did you write that?
Well, yeah, I discovered that in the research. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I want to thank all of our friends who recommended that we become Logos users.
That was really helpful with this.
Yeah. So
and we noticed where it was helpful for you writing, right?
Well, here's the thing. When you told me you need to write this, okay, so what I normally do is what all the research books say. You start with your encyclopedias and dictionaries. And here I am getting up. It's like, I got to do this first. Here I'm getting up to that bookshelf. And it's like, wait, I got this Logos software.
Yeah.
Let me just type it in and see if it comes straight up as I was flipping through a bunch of pages. And sure enough, it gets you all that. So it's not a commercial for Logos software, but I mean, like,
I don't mind buzz marketing for Logos software. They gave us huge breaks because we're academic people.
But I mean, it's like my first instinct was to go grab the hard stuff and the hard copy stuff.
Then you realized I have this way.
And it pulls it all up very neatly for you. So it's like, yeah, we were late to the party by a decade probably, but hey, fashionably late.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that it was a good time for me to become a user of Logos.
It helped us out, and so. But back to Pergamum. So, if you wanted to go if you wanted a problem and you needed to speak with a god about this, you could do no better than to go to Pergamum if you lived in Asia Minor,
right?
Because you had the altar of Zeus. I mean, who else are you going to go to?
So, Asclepius.
Yeah, Asclepius for medical things, healings. If you were sick, all you needed to do was lay down on this floor and snakes would crawl over you.
Well, then
you
also have to bring your little casting, your clay casting of the body part you wanted healed. Like they did.
Was that here? We had Asclepius here. This was his place.
Was there, but it was also in Corinth, and they found more of those castings in Corinth, but probably some there too.
Yeah, you couldn't do both. It's just like Disneyland and Disney World. You couldn't do all the attractions at both parks, or else nobody goes to the other one, right? So here you get the snakes.
So you didn't see the body part,
No, but you had that. So if you needed medical healing, Asclepius. If you needed general things, Zeus. If you needed wisdom for some decision, well, you go to Athena. And then after you've done all that, you're worn out. So enjoy the best entertainment that Pergamum has to offer. So go to the 70-degree angle theater, and then go to Dionysius.
Like the staircase in the old Newburgh house.
That's right. Yeah,
I'm gonna die.
That was our old administrative building,
right?
Trinity.
But
then you could go to Dionysius' temple, and whatever base desire you had could be, as I say in the documentary, could be, let's just say, attended to. So anyway, but fortunately, eventually, and then you had imperial worship cult took hold there, and Trajan had a temple there and all that. Well, and you said, and it's in the documentary, you said, I had an argument with the director about this. Well, not an argument, but he had mentioned that the temple, the altar of Zeus was probably the seat of Satan mentioned with Pergamum. Yeah, you said, I don't think so. You said, I think it's this Trajan worship, this imperial worship cult. Yeah. And so That was interesting. But here's the
I
insider.
mean, a lot of older scholars would have said that, 150 years ago and stuff, and probably still some today. But most scholars think.
Here's why I'm divided. And I wonder if these guys have taken a look at the altar. Because the altar to Zeus was massive, could see it from like 20 miles away or something. Massive thing, and it looks like a big chair. So that's interesting. But then on the other hand, you've got the imperial worship cult was a huge problem. You know, so who knows?
Yeah.
But you know.
Yes.
You know. And what you claim to knowledge of is in the documentary. So
yes.
There you go. So that cool play, but here's the insider knowledge. If you watch the documentary, you'll see us talking. Yeah. Presumably at Pergamum. We're not at Pergamum when we're talking about Pergamum because it was so windy on top of that hill. I have never in my life experienced wind like this. And so we couldn't film up there.
Not even Chicago?
No, Chicago's got nothing on Pergamum.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I literally had trouble standing up.
Right.
And
you don't fall down at U2 concerts in Chicago.
Right, that's right. That's right.
At least not from
that's right.
the wind.
And I was probably at a 70-degree angle in the stadium. So,
right.
But no, really bad wind. And so they got footage of the stuff in Pergamum, but not us in Pergamum, because the mics would be picking up all the wind. So,
but the wind blew in his way.
Anyway, that was interesting. So there's Pergamum. We didn't read the text on Pergamum. We got to truck through. Thyatira, is it Thyatira next? Yeah, Thyatira.
Thyatira.
The angel of the church in Thyatira, right?
Interesting on that. Smallest city, longest letter.
Yeah, I said that. I didn't check you either on that. I just assumed you were right.
The Greek word count, yeah.
The Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and his feet are like burnished bronze, says this: I know your deeds and
I
your
love
love
to be
and faith
fact-checked.
and service and
I love to be vindicated
that your
from
deeds
other
of late
people's time.
are greater than ever.
People spend their time proving me right. It's great. Oh, I'm sorry, you're reading the Bible. I should shut up.
Go ahead. Tell us about Thyatira.
No, what's interesting. No, because you got to read the passage to talk about it. So read it again. Right. I was talking over you.
Okay, but I have this against you. Okay, well, now what he likes about them is their deeds were better. Their deeds were better.
Start at the beginning.
To the angel of the church of Thyatira write, the Son of God, who has eyes like a flame of fire and his
now,
feet
why
like
is this
burnished
important?
bronze, says.
Now, why is that important?
Well, I know why.
Yeah, well, I know
because
why
I read
too.
what you wrote about.
Right, because well, there's a conflation of a Greek Lydian guy that just most people know Apollo, right? And so, but there's a description.
Are you going to talk about Tyremnus?
Tyremnus, Apollo's, yeah. So, but there's a description of him, with how his feet are bronze and rays of light and stuff. And what John writes here is a description of Jesus.
Yeah, and
eyes
because
blazing like fire,
and he was referred to as a son of Zeus, or son of God.
Son of God, yeah.
And Jesus is the Son of God.
Right.
Right.
And so I just think that was awesome.
It is really cool. Yeah. Did you know that prior to researching this?
No, because
well, you can't know everything, but that's
right.
Cool. You learned from this process.
I learned that little bit about the background detail of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you'll never read that passage the same again.
No.
I know your deeds and your love and faith and service and perseverance, and that your deeds of late are greater than at the first. Okay, so there's progress, right? But I have this against you.
But
that you tolerate the woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, and she teaches and leads my bondservants astray, so that they commit acts of immorality and eat things sacrificed to idols. I gave her time to repent, and she does not want to repent of her immorality.
Yeah.
Behold, I will throw her on a bed of sickness, and those who commit adultery with her into great tribulation, unless they repent of her deeds. And I will kill her children with pestilence, and all the churches will know that I am he who searches the minds and hearts, and I will give to each of you according to your deeds.
Yeah. And, Jesus killing children.
Well, children of her adultery is people that share her.
Follow after her.
Yeah.
Right.
But do you want to say something about this?
Well,
Was that woman's name really Jezebel, you think?
No.
It's a casting back to the Old Testament.
Yes. But I do believe that there was a woman who fancied herself a prophet or prophetess. Interesting, there was a nearby oracle outside of town where a prophetess did her thing. But again, that's one of those things, Was she that? No, it seems like she's part of the community of believers that was taking on herself, kind of in the same way as Echo.
Yes.
Yeah. So while it's interesting that there was a nearby oracle, I doubt that she was the facilitator of that. It seems more likely that she came up from within the church and trying to lead them astray in the same way that you would find with Jezebel marrying the king and leading them off into idolatrous worship.
Yeah. And there probably was some sexual immorality, actual sexual immorality.
There's always sexual immorality with pagan worship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like...
Well, that's one of the things that
yeah.
that I said last year sometime, and you were like, that's a really good point. Yeah. When you have a weird cult or a false religion, oftentimes sex is right in the middle of one of the motivators. Yeah. Not every case, but most of them.
Most of them.
But so I have an interesting... By the way...
And who is the famous Thyatira lady?
Who's the Lydia? You talking
yes.
about Lydia? Because of the purple?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what did God do when Paul was talking? Opened her heart. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bible stuff.
That's right.
Bible stuff.
No, it's cool because you can actually... Because the history is that they made dyes there. And they made a purple dye.
Yeah, a cheap purple dye.
Yeah, but it wasn't like they used a mollusk or something to get the dye typically for purple.
Well, because that would give you the royal type purple.
Yeah.
That they did in some other cities, but
they had one that was what we today call turkey red.
Yeah.
Now, when you say turkey red, is that the red that's on their flag? Turkey red.
That's what they.
Because that's red.
Yeah. No, that's not.
Okay. There's a dye that's purple that's called turkey red.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it comes out. You can get it to come out purple.
Yeah. So.
And it was cheaper.
If you go to.
But see, the reason why people think that she wasn't in Thyatira and had gone on to Philippi was because Thyatira was a very industrious kind of place, and a lot of the...
Well, even today, it's settled in the middle of downtown.
So there's a lot of
a big city.
In the ancient world, there's a lot of trade guilds. And these trade guilds would meet, they would assemble, you could say they were an assembly, right? And so it's not just like artisans who share a similar trade get together and have a banquet to celebrate themselves. There was also pagan, the gods were mixed in everything.
Religious worship was a part of the trade guilds.
Right. It was
and you weren't going to be a functioning part of it unless you were.
Right. And since she was
Is that what happens today with certain civic societies?
Yeah.
Interesting question.
And so she probably it was easier to ply her trade away from there so that she, as a worshiper of the true God, wouldn't have to get mixed in with all of that false worship. So that's interesting that she would...
It's very interesting. And this Tyremnus that we mentioned about, he was on the coins, which tells us that, number one, he was obviously a patron god of the city. He may have been the big deal there, and he probably, because he's on the coinage, had to do with the guilds.
Well, they got and because it was it was like the industrial part. They were granted permission to print their own coins too, which is why a lot of the coinage is found there as other places.
But let me tell you something for you pastors that preach on this. This would be, by the way, a good show for people that are going to preach through this stuff to listen to. Because it gives you the
or to watch
context.
your documentary when that comes out.
Yeah, but we're talking in a little more detail about some of this stuff. Yeah. And almost any town in southern Turkey, there are a few things. So if a church member says, "What about this place? Tell me about this place," you can say the following and almost always be right. You can say something like, "Well, there was probably an original Hittite settlement there in that city, and then after the Trojan War." Greeks settled there, and then after the Greeks, Alexander. Well, in the midst of that, the Persians came. The Persians came, and then after the Persians, Alexander the Great came, and now we have this Hellenistic Greek stuff back again. And then after Alexander the Great, the kingdom of Pergamum came. Then the Seleucids. Then in 133 BC, big year for the Romans. Yeah. The Romans came.
Right.
You can say that. It's true about every city.
Yeah, but the kingdom of Pergamum was already allied with Rome. It wasn't much for him to be. Yeah. So by then...
But the other thing is coinage.
Yeah.
Almost every one of these cities, one of the things that you can say is they were allowed to print their own coins.
Yeah. And had pagan gods all over those coins.
The first time we heard that was
Emperor worship all over those coins.
First time we heard that was in Ospindos.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, that's interesting. They were one of the first cities to have coinage. That's amazing. Look at that. By the end of the trip, we were like, yeah, so what? That's everybody. Not impressive anymore.
Ospindos has like the great theater, but not mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah, there was a couple of sites that are in the doc that we're not talking about here.
Ospindos got thrown in, and Pergae because of the...
Pergae is mentioned in the Bible.
Right, in Acts, not in Revelation. So those two... But Ospindos really not mentioned in the Bible, but got included.
Paul would have certainly known about Ospindos. It was a city of note. Yeah. And it's in a region he passed. I mean, he sailed into Antalya, what is now Antalya, and then you can't go there and not know about Ospindos.
Well, yeah, and because of the way that the theater has been preserved through the centuries, I mean, it's just
about the theater.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's not.
Would have been nice to see it myself in person, but just looking
now that's a good thing. That's an interesting thing because the theater in Ospindos is not bigger than the temple or the theater in Ephesus.
No, but
it's not as ornate as the theater in Pergae. Yeah. But what's interesting about that theater is it's so well preserved.
Yeah.
So back then they would have been like, "Oh, it's a great theater, really impressive theater," but they wouldn't have been as impressed with it then as we are now because what we're impressed with is that it's preserved.
Yeah.
You know. And they still do stuff there, but this is not about Ospindos.
Did you listen to an orchestra while you were there?
I didn't get to do it, but the day that we filmed in Ospindos, that night they had an opera there with, full orchestra and everything. And the governor for that province even came to it. And our film crew filmed it. So it's going to be in the documentary, but I wasn't actually there that night. Because our hotel was like an hour and a half away, and we were not invited to come back. So you do what the director tells you. Right. But anyway, Thyatira, the interesting thing about Thyatira, I'm not going to say, I don't say this in the documentary because it wouldn't be
Thyatira or Thyatira?
Thyatira.
We both said both all through this. So.
It's Thyatira, but I'll tell you what, the English pronunciation.
We're getting like Leighton Flowers here with our words. What's wrong with us?
Well, but this, okay.
Okay, we haven't recorded in a while, so.
This is Thyatira.
Our Leightonisms are coming out.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
We're normally more.
How do you say the one that starts with an L?
Laodicea?
Okay, you said Laodicea.
Yeah.
All right. I would have looked at the Greek and said Laodicea, Laodicea. But they were like, what are you guys saying? And the people that live there, what are you saying? Laodicea or Laodicea or whatever, how do you want it? And they're like, the way we say it is Laodicea. Laodicea. So,
yeah, okay.
So I'm just saying who cares, right?
Right.
I'm saying it the way that John MacArthur and everybody else says it. How about that?
Anyway, so it sounds like a great trip.
Thyatira.
Yeah.
I won't say this in the documentary, but most unimpressive ruins of the whole bunch. I'm serious. We were there.
And he's banned from Turkey.
Well, no, I mean, if I'm going to be banned from Turkey, it would have been preaching in an underground church and seeing 7 people saved.
Amen.
But seriously. Really unimpressive ruins. I mean, maybe if it would have been the first thing I saw, I'd have been like, oh, look, these stones are thousands of years old or blah, blah, blah. But it was the last thing.
We can go pick up a rock anywhere.
Yeah, well, I know, but you know what I mean. But this is at the end of the trip, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, big deal. Can I go to that Starbucks over there? And there's nothing really, there's no like big feature or anything. They were having trouble figuring out what to shoot at Thyatira.
Oh, I forgot, because we missed a couple of weeks. We told people we just ramble on long anyway. So
well, good. Matter. Okay, so let's just be done with Thyatira.
Okay.
So Sardis, I'm not going to, well, to the angel of the church of Sardis write, he who has the 7 spirits of God and 7 stars, say this, I know your deeds and that you have a name, that you are alive, but you are dead. Wake up and strengthen the things that remain, which were about to die. For I have not found your deeds completed in the sight of my God. So remember that you have received what you have received and heard, and keep it and repent. Therefore, if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief. Now listen to me, Internet. I will come like a thief if you don't wake up, and you will not know at what hour I will come to you. But you have a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their garments, and they will walk with me in white, for they are worthy. He who overcomes will thus be clothed in white garments, and I will not erase his name from the book of life, and I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. All right, so now, Sardis was the one that Matthew Chisholm wrote most of, and it was probably my second favorite site.
Really?
Maybe. Because it had the Roman gymnasium, which was unbelievable. It also had the best remains. It has the remains of the temple of Artemis. There was a temple of Artemis in Ephesus. The one in Sardis is really complete. And, well, not complete, but really well held together. That's not even true. It's just impressive, okay? There's columns. There's like a bunch of columns still standing really high, and you can see the whole layout of it the way it is. But there's a church still there on the site. I think I said that earlier in the episode. But the gymnasium was cool, and we filmed the intro to the show there. So what's kind of funny, this is kind of being on a film crew, it's kind of like this. So Sardis was like the second to last place we went, but it's where we filmed the intro. So we're saying, like, in that Roman gymnasium, we're about to set out on a journey through southern Turkey. And in our heads, we're like, I'm so glad this journey is about done.
Right.
So, but anyway, so Sardis had a reputation for being alive, but they were dead. Strengthen what remains. If you don't watch, I'm going to come to you. Now, here's an interesting thing. Sardis was a 2-tiered city. And the second tier was way up there on an Areopagus. Way up. Like a couple miles away and way up. And then the lower part of the city was way down below. So the lower class were literally lower class. Oh, I went crazy with the puns with this in the documentary. I was like, please forgive me for this. I know you're distracted by the timer. We'll get it right. Okay. But
no, I'm distracted by that you said Areopagus instead of Acropolis.
Well, you're right about that.
Because we're just latent flowers the whole thing.
Yeah, we are. You're right.
This is so bad.
It was an Acropolis, okay?
We're just
not
miffing it all day long.
Well, it's not just me this time. It's
no,
you
it's
too.
me.
We're both
It's me. I know.
up.
We're just it's on Marco Polo with latent flowers is infecting us. You know.
Well, we are, but it's fine. We can't
Right,
be
because latent
perfect
flowers has
all the
way
time.
more subscribers, and he butchers words like crazy.
And you know the only person that pointed out? J.D. Hall and us. That's it. That's it.
Well, that's great company.
But those
thanks.
represent his best friends. So, but so anyway, Sardis was a 2-tiered city that up on the Acropolis, way up high, was where the upper crust lived, the high society.
Right.
And anyway, and they literally looked down their noses at the people below.
Kind of like the way I do everyone else.
Yeah, you live on the Acropolis,
That's
right over in East Evansville. But so think about the worldview difference that would naturally be in that situation, because if you're living on the bottom shelf, and a war is about to happen,
you die first.
You are terrified.
Yeah.
If you're on the upper shelf, you're like, we'll probably be okay. It's just going to be fine.
Yeah.
And which would have been the case. But when Cyrus came to, what's the guy's name? Anyway, the guy that was at Sardis at the time, he was up on that Acropolis, and they camped out down there, and he was kind of boasting about it, like, yeah, you guys aren't going to get up here and get us. We're fine. So Cyrus paid, as the story goes, or offered a reward to any one of his soldiers who would find a way to get up there. And so one night, one of his soldiers is leaned against a tree, maybe smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Or a hookah, or who knows. And he's looking at this thing, and he notices up there's this one soldier up on the Acropolis that's a watchman who drops his helmet. And he watches that helmet bounce and fall all the way down the wall. And then a few minutes later, the most amazing thing, this soldier goes down a little hidden staircase, opens a little door, goes out and gets his helmet, and goes back up. He's like, shoot, I'm going to tell the king about this. So he goes and tells them. They lay siege, and they win against Sardis. And the same thing happened in a later battle where they were throwing their dead, and the encamped army saw that these vultures were just hanging out in one particular area, and none of the watchmen were over in that particular area. And why? Well, because that's where they're throwing their dead. And over there was a good place to lay siege because nobody was watching that area. So when Jesus says, if you wake up, because otherwise I will come to you like a thief, and you will not know what hour I come. Obviously, that echoes gospel language too. But what it's saying to Sardis, anyone in Sardis knows their history. They're like, we got a problem with our watchmen. Nobody's paying attention.
Right.
And Jesus is playing on that. So like you said about the Son of God language and the bronze and all that, same thing here. This is rich with historical background information that I think gets missed.
Yes, and it's fascinating to read. It's why I always tell people, it's why I spend most of my time looking at that stuff in my own research, because it's wonderful. And
you could get our documentary for this stuff, but you could get the historical background commentary on the Old and New Testament. That would help.
Or you can read ancient Greek literature.
Or even when you're just going to preach on a particular location, just study it really well, because this stuff isn't hard to find. You just got to look.
Yeah.
You know. Philadelphia. Okay. To the angel of the church of Philadelphia write, he who is holy and who is true, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, and who shuts and no one opens, says this, I know your deeds. Behold, I have put before you an open door, which no one can shut, because you have a little power and have kept my word and have not denied my name. Behold, I will cause those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. I will make them come and bow down at your feet and make them know that I have loved you, because you have kept the word of my perseverance. I also will keep you from the hour of testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world, to test those who dwell on the earth. I am coming quickly. Hold fast what you have, so that no one will take your crown. He who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he will not go out from it anymore. And I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven, and from my God, and my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Now, Philadelphia has the second least impressive ruins. I'm just being honest, okay?
It's no Thyatira, but it's
no, it's better than Thyatira. It's just only second worst.
Oh,
you know? Thyatira's the worst when we're talking about impressive ruins.
That's what I said. It's better than Thyatira.
Oh yeah, okay,
but it's still
it's
meh.
It's better than Thyatira.
But just meh. It's just
not exactly.
What's the coolest thing you saw there?
Okay, the remains of the Church of St. John.
So you didn't literally see a synagogue of Satan? No, I'm just kidding.
All you got to do is look around the outside of the wall, and you see about 17 mosques. So, do with that what you will. But there's the Church of St. John built in the 600s, and you can. This is on logos. You guys have logos. You go, or you just go Google a picture. Church of St. John, Philadelphia. But the two legs. Like there was this huge structure, dome structure with a Roman arch here, and that all that remains are these two big columns with part of an arch, which is kind of cool because it looks like an open door, right? So it fits, and that just happened because of time. But anyway, the whole yard is. I bet most of you have a yard at your house that's bigger than the yard, and I'm not even talking about people that have like a lot of land. The whole thing's less than an acre.
So like my yard.
Yeah, your yard's probably about the size. Maybe another third bigger is what it is. You know, yeah, about like your yard. Yeah. And there's not much there, but what is there is pretty cool. Because you do have that big structure. There's nothing like this at Thyatira, but there is that big structure, the St. John. And what's funny is, like, yeah, about the size of your yard, but there's a little area with like a covering and a table so that tour groups who really want to spend a lot of time can eat their lunch there and then go back to looking at Philadelphia. And I'm thinking,
so like
what?
My patio.
Once you look at it, there it is. There's nothing else to read. There's nothing else to see. And so they had to really get creative with getting shots there too. But I'm actually happy with the footage that we got there. But anyway, so that's Philadelphia.
And how Keith did that one.
Keith did that one. He did a great job because I'm surprised he had as much to say.
Because if you're staring at my backyard worth of ruins, you're like, what do you say about this? It's a pile of stuff.
Yeah. Well, what you want to say is this. Here's the historical information that pastors might appreciate, is that at Pergamus, the king wanted to build kind of a juncture between where two roadways met that came through the region. And so he built Philadelphia there to serve as a doorway, basically, to connect these roadways.
Well, yeah, and Thyatira was also on the...
Yeah, it was too.
Well, at the junction of the roads, which is why they will say that those churches can appear in order, as if...
Yeah. as a
ancient
cyclical
mail
letter
route.
could go.
Yeah.
What he's talking about, for those that don't know, is like it's true with 1 Peter too. You bust it open, and what does it say? To the saints that are in Asia Minor, and then he lists off several cities. And if you look geographically at a map, you look today at the map, and look, they go in order in a circle, so that people could, so that the letter carrier could just open the letter. Okay, I know where to go. And so that was pretty cool. But Philadelphia was connecting this roadway and was meant to be. Now, here's the thing. They had an earthquake that devastated the city, and they built, this is end of 1st century, beginning of 2nd century, they had vineyards. So they planted all these vineyards to help their economy to recover from this earthquake. And to this day, there's vineyards everywhere. But Domitian had them cut down half their vineyards. Just a jerk. Just an awful person. But you can go to the vineyard site, and in the documentary, I'm envious because Stephen, my co-host, had this really cool line where we went and found these vineyards, and he's walking along in between this aisle of these vineyards, and he's talking about it, and it had multiple cameras. So there's him talking to the camera, and then when he gets done, he looks up to this drone, and this drone pulls away and twists so that you see all these vineyards. It's awesome.
So he got a better.
He got a really
shot.
cool.
Yeah.
I got some pretty cool shots myself. Let me just say, really technical and difficult shots, but that one was one I was envious of.
Yeah.
So there's Philadelphia.
It's a much easier way down than I came. Don't fall into where they burn the sacrifices.
You filming me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Don't fall. Stephen. You made it. Thank goodness.
Wow.
Anything else to say about Philadelphia? They were pretty good.
Yeah. If you're going to get one of the letters, that's the one you
That's
want,
one.
right?
Maybe Smyrna.
Yeah.
You know, but so Laodicea.
Yeah. Get it right.
To the angel of the church in, this is how I said it in the narration, Laodicea, right? The Amen, the faithful and true witness, the beginning of the creation of God, says this: I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish that you were cold or hot, so because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth, because you say, I am rich, and have become wealthy, and have need of nothing, and you do not know that you are wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. I advise you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may become rich, and white garments, so that you may clothe yourself, and that the shame of your nakedness will not be revealed, and eye salve to anoint your eyes, so that you may see. Those whom I love I reprove and discipline, therefore be zealous and repent. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him, and he with me. He who overcomes, I will grant him to sit down with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So that's the last church. Now,
You okay?
that's what Laodicea does to people.
Yeah.
There's a really awesome church at Laodicea that they would not let us film in. But it was the
Really?
most complete church. Here's the theory among pretty much everyone involved, all the Turkish people and all the Iranian people on the crew and these archaeologists and stuff, is what do you do, Jonathan, what do you think you would do if you live in a system where you have actual money, like gold coins, there's no virtual banking system, and you're on top of a hill looking at a valley, and there's all these other cities out there, like 3 or 4 cities in your line of sight. Hierapolis is over here, a couple down here, and you see that an army, like say Alexander the Great, or later on,
They want your stuff.
and they're coming and they're killing. You're seeing them ravage all these cities, and you're thinking, can we beat that army? We can't beat that army. We got to run. We can't take our gold with us, because if we take our gold with us, it's going to weigh us down. And if they catch us, they're going to get it all. So what are we going to do?
Hide it.
Hide it. And the most obvious place to hide it is to bury it. And you would bury it under a building. The theory of why it is a 25-year prison sentence if you pick up a rock at Laodicea and leave with it. A 25-year prison sentence. And the reason why we were not allowed to film with a production crew inside the church there is because the belief is
There's money there.
it's under that church.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting, isn't it? Or under that church is Ancient Aliens. One of those two. Well, I don't know which one.
Yeah.
I know which one Matt Chisholm thinks.
That's right.
So anyway, Laodicea was a banking city. Mm-hmm. It was also a city where they would dye wool black. And so they had a fabric industry there. And they had a medical school that had innovated an ear salve and an eye salve, but the eye salve got all the attention. So when Jesus says to them, the inverse of what he said to the church of Smyrna, you think you're rich, but you're poor. Yeah, the people there were physically, materially wealthy, even the church people. But he was saying, yeah, but you're actually poor in the way that matters.
Right.
And so he's playing off the fact that they're a wealthy banking city. Yeah. When he says that they're naked, he's playing off the fact that they had a fabric industry. Yeah. And when he says that they need an eye salve, he's basically saying, you think you've got this eye salve and you're so great. No, you need an eye salve. And it's the kind that I can give you.
Right.
Pretty cool. But of course, the thing that gets all the play with Laodicea is the lukewarm water. Mm-hmm. And they stood between two locations, one location that had natural hot springs and one location that had cold water from the mountains.
Mm-hmm. Both of which are useful.
Very useful, that's right. Mm-hmm. And also, by the time that the pipe system is still there, you can look at it. Yeah. And what you can notice is there's silt built up in there and weird
minerals,
things and stuff that were there then. So not only is it lukewarm, but by the time it gets to Laodicea, it has picked up this mineral. It just tastes horrible. Mm-hmm. Now, what's cool is if you go across the valley to Hierapolis, where the hot springs and stuff are, and Pamukkale, and it's beautiful, you can drink that water, and it tastes like carbonated water. I'm serious. Exactly carbonated water.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't invited.
Well, that's why I'm here. You're fortunate that God has blessed you with someone to tell you about it.
To rub it in your face for,
No, we're doing a show. We're informing people.
No,
so
that's for the camera. I live with you, man.
So I'm not that. I don't. You don't feel like I rub things. I don't rub things in your face. So anyway, also, I didn't plan to talk about this because we're not talking about Hierapolis, but that's a biblical city too. And we did go there. We didn't film there. But at Hierapolis, because of that phenomenon, there is a tunnel there that they call the gateway to Hades. And for a long time, and the reason they call it this is because you go in there, you die. And actually, that's true. You go in there, you will die.
Really?
Because the lime deposits or whatever it is that's causing that gas, there's a gas that comes up. And you can drink the water and stuff, but the gas rises to the top of that cave at about chest level. So if you walk in there, you die. So the gate to Hades,
Yeah.
But these two guys claimed to be divine, and the way they got away with it was, the way they tricked everyone was, they said we were able to go to Hades and return to tell you about it. What they had figured out was just go in there and crawl, and then come back out standing up, and then you convince the masses that you're divine. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So Laodicea, lukewarm water, which was a fitting image for their spiritual state. It's not necessarily that it's just gross. Yeah. That's what everybody says. It's what you pointed out. They're not useful. Right? So anyway. So there you have it, the 7 churches.
All right.
There's a lot more I could say about the trip, but we wanted to make this helpful too.
Yeah.
So share this with a pastor friend who's going to teach through Revelation. Otherwise, he's going to do what most pastors do, which is just say about every one of the cities, this was a crossroad city. This was a crossroad city. This was a crossroad city. And now he can say more. Yeah. All right. I've enjoyed this time together. Check out the other Trinity Commission podcasts like Leighton Flowers, Soteriology 101, The Bible Bro-Down with Billy Wendell and Matt Chisholm.
Check out the Paleo Baptist blog.
Yes. With Austin Long, and we should thank Kendra for that. And then
become a patron.
Become a patron. Click. Well, I didn't mention Steve Gregg, the Near Pal. And then you can click up here if you're watching the video. If you're not watching the video, you can go to Trinity Radio. No, you can go to patreon.com/Trinity Radio and help us out. We're still not to the goal that we have set, though we thank our patrons. Thank you so much. We have some free content to go to the patrons that we didn't even post yet. So.
Right. Yes.
Till next time on Trinity Radio. Any last words, Jonathan?
Yes. If you're thinking about taking any classes or coming to any seminary to get seminary training, come to Trinity College of Bible Theological Seminary, the best seminary on planet Earth.
That's right. Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
It has been told that there were herds of elephants that lived on the plain just below the mountainside on which we're now sitting at the restaurant. And this prompted them, because obviously elephants are an unusual animal to find in this part, this prompted them to pray to them as deities. And here we have evidence on this column, which has been set up by the Roman Emperor Augustus IV.
If you would like more content, click here and keep watching Bible studies. Click up here. And finally, we want you to subscribe. We need more subscribers, so click here.